Remember in the back of the dealership when Matt Lindland was training for, I believe, either the Nationals or the World Championship, and Brad Varian was out training with him, and it was the first time that I had ever watched anybody do a quit match. And these guys wrestled Greco, and the only way you could win was to quit. And
make the other guy quit.
Yeah, they went an hour. They went an hour. And then they kind of both called it all good, and I was blown away by how in the hell did they do that? I don't know, but it is a real. You could see DC or you could see Rumble being in that position the last fight when he went out to the third round. He was physically exhausted. He was not going to win that fight. He wasn't going to finish that fight.
No, wait, what round did you say?
The third.
Okay, it ended in the second. It's about a 7.5 minute fight. It's about a 7.5 minute fight, and one of the things that Rumble... Your point is still the same, though. I got it. But for our listeners, so they don't go out there and correct you, I'll just do it now. The one thing that Rumble had that worked tremendously against him was he dropped Daniel in the first round. If you ever drop a guy and you think the fight is over, and you have that chemical release of excitement and celebration, to restart is so incredibly challenging. To do that on the spot in the same, because you'll hear guys talk about adrenaline dumps. You'll hear Joe Rogan and some announcers talk about that. Nobody really knows what that means. I know what it means, but the listeners don't really know what that means. It's a real thing, and there's a couple of ways to have them. But one of the surest ways to have it is to think you've got the jaws of victory right at your grasp, and then to have that taken away from you and find out, oh no, I got another 21 minutes left. And that did work against AJ. Now, you also said something in your original analysis of AJ I want to speak on, where you said you think he learned something from that first fight, and essentially that he'll preserve his energy. Conor McGregor lost to Nate Diaz and said, I did not preserve my energy, which was a very nice way of saying I got tired and I quit. And he said, I'm going to fight this next fight at a different pace and preserve my energy. And I just thought, you know what? You're saying you got tired and you're saying you quit. Now we're going to do the same thing again, 3.5 months separated. Doesn't work that way. Physiology just doesn't work. You can't do that. But he did. He did go out. He changed his style. He didn't put his foot on the gas. He started kind of point fighting with some of those leg kicks and some of those punches. He ate up some clock so that he could get deeper into the fight, and he did correct it. So when I tell you that I've seen these guys fight before and I've already seen the outcome and AJ's going to be... That's historically, there are some things you could point to poke a hole into my argument. And Conor McGregor is a fine example because he told us all openly, I ran out of energy, I couldn't go on, I'm going to change that in the second fight. But he actually did it. A lot of guys say it and then they come out and they do the same thing. He actually did it.
Did you ever have a wrestling match where you got run over, whether you got pinned or beat by, let's say, 8 or 9 points, and you came off the mat and you said, I can beat that guy?
Yeah.
And the next time you run right through him?
Yes. I
believe that is where Rumble's mindset has been, and that's a powerful mindset to be at. To not think you can beat him, to know, hey, I can beat that guy. I want that do-over. And I do believe that's his mindset. That's where he's been for the last 2 years. And I don't really think this is going to be a competitive fight.
Okay, and it may not be. But would you speculate that if it's not competitive and it goes Rumble's way, that it ends in a knockout fairly quickly? First couple of rounds,
yes.
But Anthony finds that opening, he lands that. I mean, he's put so many guys down. Guys with every bit as good a chin as Daniel Cormier. Not the wrestling ability, but every bit as good of a chin. Glover comes to mind. Every bit as can take a shot that Cormier can. Couldn't take Rumble's. I mean, came underneath with that uppercut, boom, he tagged him, and that was that. But it must end that way if Rumble's going to win. So when I give an analysis to the fans, because I'm always thinking about them betting, I'm thinking about they're putting their money and I'm going to influence them. But where my mind goes is who is most likely to win a decision in the hardest possible worst outcome, which is they have to fight all damn night long. Who is most likely to win? I don't know if that's the right mindset, but that's where my mind goes. Before I give an analysis, if they were to go a decision I think all of us would have to agree 99% that's going to go to D.C. A decision is going to go to D.C.
I agree. In addition, a lot of what I'm saying is based on, I believe that D.C. is on his way down, and one of the reasons he's on his way down is he has had championship rounds and championship fights at AKA, at the gym, that he should have never had, and it's going to end up taking some time off of his career. You can only scale the mountain so many times, and I believe at his age, with that body type, I believe his skills are being diminished. So if he comes out there and he runs through Rumble, I take it all back, and I'll tell you I'm wrong.
Yeah, I got you. Well, and you will be wrong. You won't have to tell me. You'll be. I mean, this is all recorded. One of us is going to be wrong, but I can definitely see it your way. I mean, I hear everything you're saying about AJ. I don't dismiss him whatsoever. But that is where my mind goes. In a worst-case scenario, which is this gets long and drug on, and it comes down to who can keep pushing, it does favor Daniel in my argument. So that's why I'm going to go in that direction. I'll tell you this. You bring up the AKA, and yes, they're having some very hard rounds in there. Don't forget, on either side of him, Daniel's got a world champion. So he's got Luke Rockhold down a weight class, one of his main sparring partners, up a weight class. He's got Cain Velasquez, both world champions. Then he sits in the middle, world champion. Hard room.
Well, and then there's killers in there that we don't even know.
Oh, most definitely. I name drop those guys just so the fans can go, holy smokes, yeah, he's going with Rockhold and then Cain. Sure, yeah, throw plenty of other killers in there. One thing about Dan, he doesn't wear headgear when he spars. That drives me crazy. I don't know why he doesn't, but he doesn't, and he should.
You're the only one in the gym that does.
Yeah, and I don't know why other guys don't. I mean, Clayton wouldn't let you on the mat without it. I learned a habit out of it. You put the headgear on. I don't get cut in practice. Feel like my head's good when, for life in general, let alone to go into a fight. I can come down here and talk to you clearly. I don't know if the headgear is to be credited for that or if that's a superstition. I mean, even amateur boxing, if you watch these last Olympic Games in Rio, amateur boxing did away with the headgear, but they did away with it for safety. They argued some argument successfully that the headgear makes it more dangerous. I don't know the argument, so I won't tell you what it is, but there was some kind of an argument around it, which I can't relate to. But I think you can make a fair point that Daniel is, whenever his career ends, whether that's 5 years from now or 5 months from now, it will be shortened because of how hard he goes in the practice room. But I think you could also make the argument that he made it all the way to the World Championship because of how hard he goes in the practice room. Training matters. You got to go hard. I mean, what's the perfect balance? You tell me.
That's the $1 million question. What is the perfect balance? I know for you, for you as somebody that's, watched your entire career, that intensity that you've been shown lately is beautiful. And I've never watched you have that before. So whatever you are personally doing, whatever's twisted up inside your head right now, that has that animal training, man, keep it up, because there's nothing wrong with that. Now, you're also, you're also better primarily than a lot of guys in the room. So you can keep that intensity. Whereas if you were in the AKA room with all world champions right next to you, you can't do that every day. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure. Thank you. There was a compliment in there for me. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I do see what you're saying. It does matter who you go with, and you got to up the intensity. I mean, one way to keep yourself safe in sparring is you got to match that guy's intensity. You got to do what he's doing, and then hope that only goes so high, and you both can spar as opposed to fight. But yeah, I do hear what you're saying. You have a Cain Velasquez at 80% of Cain is still a very dangerous guy, and you got to deal with that. Whereas if you brought in a guy with less experience and less power and cardio than Cain, maybe he could go 100%. It'd be a dick move if he did, but maybe he could, and that would still only equal 40% of Cain. Right? It's the $1 million question. Yeah. You get all twisted up on it all the time, but that's where I still believe bring in the right padding. Bring in the heavy gloves. Make sure your mouthpiece is in. Throw those headgear on. Put those knee pads on. If you're in a room that allows elbows, man, put those elbows on. It's just you got to make sure you do it right, because you will shorten your career.
Now, I will tell you this. Having watched you guys back in the back of the dealership, spar hard rounds, and then watching you guys go at Gracie Baja, man, they're getting down back there too. I mean, there's some hard goes, and I like that. I mean, I would rather you not spar at all, zero, than some of the stuff that, 50 or 60% and you call it sparring. I'm like, take your gloves off and go dance. That is not sparring. You're not going to, what's it for? So I love that intensity I've been seeing, but to this case, to where Daniel is, we'll know. We'll know here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I do have I gave you a favor for some of the nonsense that you dealt with in Kansas, in Kankakee. I will bet that right now that somebody misses weight today.